Hello, beautiful queens. How are you doing today? I'm going to dive right in. I'm not going to give you any chitter chatter. I'm going to go straight in with the questions I'm assuming you know that this podcast episode is a Q&A. So when I don't have a specific topic I want to talk about, I ask my followers and my Instagram family and my email list, do you have any questions or any topics you'd like me to talk about? And these are the responses that I have got. So I'm going to share the questions and I'm going to, of course, answer. So let's dive right in then. So the first kind of response was from a queen called Lilia. And Lilia says, as far as my input on podcast topics, I would love to hear more about how you realized that you needed help in recovery and maybe some other client stories of why they came to you for help. Okay, so I'm going to just speak to the anorexia a little bit now, because in the anorexia, I was forced to weight restore. It didn't come from me wanting to get better. Because of the age that I was still under the influence of my parents, which was a blessing in disguise. And so that's why, yes, I was weight restored, but the anorexia just morphed into binge eating disorder and bulimia. So yes, I was at a non-dangerous weight, but mentally I was pretty much the same. It just morphed into a different kind of eating disorder. So I'm going to speak to the bulimia specifically in my answer, because I was living in the bulimia when I surrendered to the fact that I really needed to get help. So before I get to the actual point of the answer to the question, like when did I know that I needed help, I want to speak to how, quote, and I'm doing quotes for the podcast here, how happy I was, or how happy I thought I was living with an eating disorder. And I'm going to talk about this now, but what drove this fake feeling of happiness, of living in an eating disorder, was the values that I had back then, or more so, the truth was the values that I held, because I learned from society that the values that I had were the values that I should have, because that's what everybody else in the world valued. And so therefore, if I value them too and be a product of those values, then I'll be loved and accepted and all the things. So our values are what drive our behaviors. Even if you have no idea what your values are right now, look around at your life. Whatever has manifested, whatever you have, whatever you do, they have been created from your values, because as humans, that's just how we behave. Our behaviors are driven by our values. And back then, when I was in the eating disorders, my values were discipline, dedication, approval, and appearance, especially my body's and other people's bodies' appearance. And society value all of those, right? Dedication, discipline, not necessarily approval, but they create this container of, I will approve of you if you're thin or slim or whatever the trend is at the time, whatever is most admired in society at that time. That's where my value of appearance came from. And we're praised if we're like, oh my God, you're so dedicated, you're so disciplined. I'm not saying these are not good values to have, by the way. I'm just speaking from my experience and how the eating disorder was driven by the values that I had, because society valued those, and that's how I learned them. So I would go to, I remember one time in particular, I went to like this boxing fight, and it was like this big celebration, and everyone from the gym went, and there was food there, and I would show up with my Tupperware of weighed mincemeat and weighed rice and weighed green beans, and I would literally sit there and eat it. I actually stood there because there was no seats at the dedicated time that I had set myself to eat. So the meal that everyone was having together wasn't till later. I think it was like 8 o'clock after the fight. But because I ate at like 6 o'clock, I ate my Tupperware. Well, I didn't actually eat the Tupperware. That would be weird. The plastic. I was probably hungry enough to. I remember standing up, eating this cold mince and vegetables out of the Tupperware, because that was the time I was supposed to eat in my little routine and my rules that I'd set for myself. And that was the food that I was having because I was on a food plan, because I was losing weight or trying to lose weight or actually losing weight, whatever I was doing at that time. And people would look at me and be like, wow, that is so dedicated. You're so disciplined. I wish I was as dedicated as you. But they would actually allow themselves to enjoy the food. So I saw that as a bit of superiority, really. I was kind of like, yeah, look at me. I'm so cool. I'm so dedicated. I'm so disciplined. Like, people want to be like me. And actually, I was the one missing out on that social experience. And so many other times, God, I've lost count how many times that I've turned down social invitations for food because no, it's not a cheat day in quotes. So therefore I need to stick to my meal plan. And when I used to work in a bank and I had set times for breaks that I could have my snacks and my weighed out peanut butter and all of that, if I was late because a customer took longer than I had assumed or whatever, I would be fuming. I would be so hangry. Not even hangry, it was the fact that I hadn't followed the rule of the time that I eat with my meals spaced out. And this, of course, is anorexia behaviors. I mean, when I was in the anorexia, it was more extreme, but it's just the same thing in a different way. But I was, quote, happy doing those things because I was in a lean, admired body. And so I was being praised and celebrated for that. I would go to the gym twice a day, 6 days a week. And then on my rest day, I would be posting about, oh, it's so hard to have a rest day. I'm dreaming about leg day and all of that stuff. Like, I just could not have a rest day, even mentally, physically. I would then get over 20,000 steps in because it was, quote, a rest day, but at least I needed to move. It was all consuming and obsessive and very compulsive. And the reason for that, and I say the reason for that, meaning I thought I was happy in that, was I spoke about the values, that's like most of it, but it was because I was doing fitness modeling. I was fully immersed in the bodybuilding fitness world, that fitness industry, and people around me, the people that I spent a lot of time with, saw these behaviors as normal and admired and praised. And so it wasn't really an issue. But then when I met Wouter, my now husband, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. There's a ring. Sorry, podcast, for the singing. If you want to see the ring, then yeah, check out the video or go to my social media. I've spammed people with wedding photos and I'm not sorry about it. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, when I met Wouter in Egypt back in 2017, I was fully in the bulimia. Oh my gosh. We went on an all-inclusive holiday, me and my best friend Natalie. And I mean, this isn't funny, but I can laugh about it now because she's healed and she's in food freedom now, and she looks back and laughs. She went on a holiday with me for, I was only there for a week. Well, it might have been 2 weeks. Can't actually remember now. I think it was only a week. We went for a week all-inclusive holiday, and she actually like lost something like 8 pounds or something in a week because she was just copying what I was doing. And yes, she was, quote, happy about it, but looking back, it was so ridiculous because my normal routine would be to wake up at 5, drag Natalie out of bed, and would go on like a 10K, like 10 to 15K run every morning in the Egyptian heat. We tried to get up before the sun, but if you've been to Egypt in the summer, you know what it's like. And before we did anything else. And then we wouldn't have breakfast because I just didn't eat breakfast. Then we would go, and by the way, I am not endorsing this behavior. This is fucked up, seriously dangerous eating disorder behavior. So we'd run 10K in the Egyptian heat outside of the resort where you're not even allowed to go. We got bitten or stung or whatever mosquitoes do. We got attacked by a mosquito that had this massive allergic reaction. And then we had to have an injection for blood poisoning because it was that serious. And even when Natalie's feet were so swollen with all these red, like massive swollen things that had gone from our feet all the way up to the tops of our legs, she couldn't get her shoes on, her running trainers on because her feet were so sore and swollen. And I was like, it's fine, just like make your laces bigger and just like squash your feet in. We're going running or I'm going without you. Like, oh my God, there's no compassion or self-care at all. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so we would do that, have a run, have no breakfast. Then we would chill by the pool. And then when lunchtime came around and my tummy was like literally rumbling so loud, and so was Natalie's, Natalie was like, when do we go for lunch? And I was like, yeah, you just ignore it. So when you have hunger, you just ignore it and it just goes away. I mean, what the fuck, Victoria? So poor Natalie well, she had a choice, right? But she looked up to me because everyone admired my body. So she also ignored her hunger. So, and then about 3 o'clock, we would then go to the gym at the hotel and do like a hardcore, insane workout for an hour, and then go back to the apartment, to the room, to have a shower and chill. And then we would go out for dinner. So we would allow ourselves to, well, I would allow myself to eat in the evening after not having eaten all day. And then I would binge, of course, because I was starving. Poor Natalie didn't even like the food much, so she didn't actually, quote, binge. She was just starving for the whole holiday. And then I would overcompensate. I would compensate by taking laxatives and then over-exercising the next day. I was in that shit when I met Wouter on this holiday. And without going into my love story, I mean, if you want a whole episode about my love story, let me know, and I will happily record one. But I know it has nothing to do with food freedom and body love, although he was a catalyst of that. But just let me know, and I might do that. So I met him when I was in that, and then the holiday happened, and then, long story short, I ended up moving to the Netherlands 3 to 4 months after I met him. And then and then I was out of my environment, right? I was so out of my comfort zone, I can't even tell you. I was completely taken away. Well, I chose to come. This is just how I live my life. Like, fuck it, what's the worst that can happen? And off I go. I was completely out of my comfort zone. I was out of my routine, my rituals, my rules, like just right in at the deep end. And then I was really shown a mirror by Wouter, by my different change of environment, by different people, how disordered I was. I was shown the actual prison that I was in. And this is when my eating disorder behaviors seriously started to negatively affect my life in destructive and harmful ways, with excessive laxative abuse, like taking all of that. Oh my God, the mental destruction I had within myself, the self-hate and the self-flagellation. It's painful to even think about how I used to think towards myself. And Wouter, and I didn't have any friends at that point when I just moved. I wasn't in a normal environment sorry, hold on, let me start again. I wasn't in an environment where eating disorder behavior was normalized or praised. It was actually the opposite. Wouter would be like, don't you want to like take care of yourself? Don't you want to actually nourish your body? And I've never been asked those questions before. It's always been about weight loss or weight gain or muscle gain or whatever. But he was like, well, don't you want to actually take care of yourself so your brain works properly and you feel good? And I was like, do I? And that kind of started to shift everything. I couldn't train like I used to because there was gyms over here, yeah, but I would go with Wouter and it was completely different gym. I mean, shout out to Matt Carlin's gym in Darley Abbey in Derby, because it's the best fucking gym in the whole entire world. And I love that gym, and I still do. And I go back when I'm in England. I'm a different person now, but I still love the way they train and the banter and all of that. Anyway, I digress. But I was taken out of my routine, my rituals, my rules, all the classes that I used to go to. And I couldn't get back to what I was doing. So no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't restrict anymore. It started off like only being able to restrict for a week. And then of course I'd binge at the weekend. And then it stopped going from a week I was able to restrict for, and it would be like 4 days and then 3 days. And then eventually I literally couldn't restrict for like a friggin' half a day or an hour. At the very last point, I told myself I need to restrict, I need to diet, I need to lose weight. I had all these plans and I literally couldn't do it. And I felt like the biggest failure ever. But something was happening under the surface that, of course, on reflection and knowing what I know now, I can see this so clearly. My values were starting to change. My values were starting to shift because of, well, I believe in a higher power. You all know that. Because of something bigger than me, this was my path I needed to experience. I needed to leave England and leave my environment to get to where I am now. But my values unconsciously to me started changing and shifting, which is why one reason why I couldn't stick to what I wanted to do, like I had done all this in all the other times. But mainly as well, because if you've listened to my podcast for a while, you know that restriction, your body can restrict for so long, and then your biology takes over and you literally don't have a choice. So it was a combination of those things. And I was in an identity crisis. I literally didn't know who the fuck I was anymore. I was no longer this lean person with a six pack who was training like a million times a day. I was no longer the person who everyone was like, wow, here comes Vic, the machine. I was no longer that person, and I didn't know who I was. I wanted to be that person. I thought I did, but albeit known to me now, I was evolving and growing, or giving an opportunity or a big slap around the face, basically to grow and evolve, because I was ready to let go of that past version of me. So I could no longer live by the old values that I had of discipline and dedication and appearance and approval, no matter how hard I tried. So I had actually a panic attack, I think it was, I've never had one before, in the car. I mean, I won't go into detail of that, but I had a panic attack in the car when I was delivering some brownies. That I used to have a brownie bakery business. When I moved here, started my own brownie bakery business. And I remember that day specifically was the day that I couldn't diet for like even an hour. And because I was baking brownies, I was around all the ingredients. I couldn't keep them out of the house because I had this business. And I remember cutting all these brownies up for this place that I was taking them to, this opening day for something or other. And I remember cutting my hand, and then it wasn't that bad. It was quite a bad cut, but that was like, it was just one thing on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And then I just like binged my face off, took these brownies to this place. I shouldn't have even been driving. I could hardly see. I was crying so much. Messaged this woman who speaks Dutch and didn't speak English, and I didn't speak any Dutch at that point. Like, I'm in the car, like, you need to come and get the brownies from outside. I don't want the money, just get the brownies. I need to go. And the poor lady was like looking at me like, oh my God, in Dutch, like, what, are you okay? And I just like was like, take the brownies, I'm going. My best friend Natalie called me and it answered by mistake, and I didn't want to speak to anybody. And she was like, I'm literally getting on a plane and coming over right now. You sound like you're having a panic attack. Anyway, I convinced her not to come. And this said panic attack. I know panic attacks don't last for days, but I was crying hysterically for about 3 days. I couldn't think straight. I was scared of my own thoughts. I hated myself. It had gone past like restriction and hating my body. It was like this huge, overwhelming panic of I am not okay, and I don't know how I'm ever going to be okay. I don't know who I am anymore. I need a drink. And that was really scary. So at that point, I think it was like the third day, after sitting on the floor crying for hours and Wouter not knowing what the hell to do. And I just decided I needed help. There was something in me that completely surrendered and gave up. And I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I need help. And that was the point, Lilia, asking the question, that I knew I needed help. Now, I do not want people to have to get to this point in order to, before they reach out for help. I wish I had been asked this question before I knew it, and now I know it. This question is this bad enough to change, or is it good enough to stay? And I would have definitely been living from the place of it's not bad enough to change yet. It's not bad enough yet. It's not bad enough yet, until I literally had no choice. I was completely broken. But now I look from the context of, is this good enough to stay? Is this good enough for me? And so there's two completely different ways of looking at a situation that you might want to change. And I fought until the very end, and it didn't need to be that way. I wish I had known about food freedom and body love before I had got to that stage, because before I got to this massive panic attack thing, before I decided I needed help and started researching help for binge eating disorder and all of that stuff and bulimia, I didn't even know what intuitive eating was. I didn't even know what body positivity was. I had no idea. I just know that I just fucking could not carry on the way I was. I completely gave up. And it was the best thing that I ever did for myself in my whole entire life. So if you're listening to this, well, of course you know about food freedom and body love because you're listening or watching this. Do not wait until you're literally broken into a million pieces before you decide to get help. Don't do that, please. There is so much better waiting for you. And it starts with you deciding that this is not good enough to stay. And I know that's linked to self-worth and self-love and all of that, but you get to choose. Let me be your inspiration. I wish I had chosen myself and chosen food freedom and body love years ago. I didn't have to wait till I was 30, but I did. I'm 36 as I'm recording this. And I feel like a completely different person in every single way. And my values now are love, courage, abundance, and alignment with my true authentic self. They couldn't be further from my old values. And if you look at my life, or if I look at my values have manifested in how I live, in my things, in how I live, in my thoughts, and how I feel every day. They're manifested love, courage, abundance in every way, in alignment with my authentic self. And so the last part of Lily's question was, where did she say? She said, oh, maybe some other stories of clients of why they came to you for help. Well, I just want to read, I've just picked a part of my website that I want to read to you because this will sum up that part of the question. I'm reading from my website here. Women come to me when they're ready to let go of calorie counting, restriction, binge eating, purging, and their obsession with food and their bodies. They know that their current way of living is not only exhausting, but it's just not serving them anymore. They want to live in food freedom and body love, but they're not sure how. They've tried everything, but nothing seems to work. I serve these women powerfully without fear that they won't succeed, because I've been there and now I am free. My clients and I are living proof that it's possible for you too, especially with my support, guidance, knowledge, and love. It's okay if you do not believe in yourself, and it's okay if you don't believe that this will work for you when you come to me. I will believe for both of us until you do too. Most women stay stuck in a disordered eating pattern their whole lives. They spend their entire existence wishing they were thinner. They're never truly happy. On their deathbeds, they look back and regret these lives. Not my clients. Okay, thank you, Lily, for those questions. The next question is from Joe. And Joe says, how do you deal with calories and counting? I know it's not aligned with my hunger cues, but they still rule my choices of what I can or can't eat. Okay, this is going to be pretty short and sweet. And I do have a whole episode titled How to Stop Calorie Counting. So Joe, if you haven't, please go and listen to that. But this is the answer to the question. You release the pursuit of control completely and you stop counting. Because currently, Joe, you are in a prison, and imagine yourself in this prison. Well, you are in it, but imagine yourself like visually in a prison, and you, in your pocket, you have the keys to let yourself out of that prison, but only you can open the door from the inside to let yourself free. I can stand on the outside and hold your hand and encourage you and say to you, look, the keys are in your pocket, just open the door, but only you can do that. Because calories rule your eating choices if you let them. It's you that's counting the calories. Yes, it's habitual. Yes, it feels automatic, but it's you that gets to decide differently. You are not your brain. You are not your past trauma. You are not your thoughts. You are the creator and you get to choose. You know, I've said this to you before, and it's absolutely fine to keep repeating myself because I still love listening to things that I already think I know. Repetition is the mother of all learning. If you want to raise your right arm, you just do it. You are in control of you. You are not your brain. You are not your habits. You are the consciousness. You are the one that gets to choose to stop doing things and to do other things, right? This is why support is so key. You need to find support from someone who gets it, who's been through it. And this is the most important, someone who can reflect your inner power back to you, so you can see how goddamn fucking powerful you actually are, and how you get to choose, you get to recover because you want to. It feels impossible, but it's not. Okay. And I know that I've offered help many times. I know that you're not in a position to be able to receive that help, but find someone who can help you and that is in alignment with you, because I know you can get over this, Joe. I know you can recover. And anyone else who is this resonating with, I know you can. You just need to choose that you want to. Find someone who can reflect how freaking powerful you are back to you. I am accepting one-to-one clients. I have space for 3 one-to-one clients at the moment. I only have 10 at a time because you get all of me, right? So you are not your brain. You are not your thoughts. You are not your past conditioning. You get to choose. Okay. Thank you for the question, Joe. And I'm sending you so much love. Okay. We have a question by the lovely Ninka. And she says, how can I get over the obstacle of not trusting that there's a life for me in self-love and food freedom? It's normal, Ninka, to feel, I know I've spoke to you about this in our group call, but anyone else, I'm sure, what you think is most relevant to you is actually most relevant to everybody as well, because we're all in this together, right? So I'm speaking to obviously Ninka and everyone who this relates to. It's normal to feel that it won't work for you. And like I said in the previous paragraph that I read from my website, I believe in you until you believe it yourself. Well, I don't even believe, I know it's going to work, quote, work for you. I know you're going to live in food freedom and body love. But to help yourself through this obstacle, your brain likes evidence, right? Some people don't need evidence. Like if you think back to the man who ran the fastest mile and people were saying it can never be done. No one's ever done it before you. He did it, and then not everyone did it, lol, that would be funny. And a lot of people after him did it too, but he went first. He showed people what was possible and broke the record. And the Guinness Book of World Records, people keep breaking records, right? You are literally infinite possibility. So look for evidence that food freedom and body love is possible for you. So evidence could be myself, people that I've coached that are living in food freedom and body love, other people on the internet, on Instagram that are living in food freedom and body love, or that you perceive to be as, because we don't actually know. But allow your brain to conjure up evidence like, okay, if she's done it, if they've done it, if he's done it, then why can't I do it? So start to ask yourself questions. Remind yourself also of what you've actually done so far that is in food freedom and is in body love, or steps towards that. For example, how many days have you not purged in the past or recently or whatever, or wherever you're at? That's proof and evidence that you do not have to purge, that you don't have to do that. You can be free from that. How many days have you been able to eat with intuition and without no restriction and tune into your body? Even if it's like one day, that's evidence that you can do that. So of course you can do it again, right? Because you're limiting yourself when you allow yourself to keep thinking that you are your brain, you are your habits, you are your past conditioning, you are what you've always done. No, that's bullshit. You are not that. You're limiting yourself to that, and then you're creating out of circumstance instead of creating out of infinite possibility. And you are infinite possibility. Really, right? Here I go. Here I go again. As can I go? I was going to go into song, but then decided not to. So here I go again, showing you, reflecting back to you how infinitely powerful you are, right? So I have a few questions that I would like you to ask yourself. Why wouldn't there be a life for you in food freedom and self-love? Why are you so special that it wouldn't work for you? Why are you so different? You're not the most fucked up one, even though that's what your brain thinks. Trust me, so many people say that when they come to me. Okay? Because all that's in the way, the obstacle that's stopping you from fully trusting and believing that you will be living in food freedom and self-love, is fear. And it's fear of feeling difficult emotions. Think about it. The worst thing that will ever happen to you is that you will feel a feeling. If you, or should I say, when you don't purge, the feeling is going to be overwhelming of like, oh my God, this what anxiety, panic. You can handle that feeling. It's fine. You've got this. The worst thing that will happen to you is you'll feel a feeling. So in order to live in food freedom and body love, obviously you're in my group coaching, Ninka. So you know you have everything you need. And I know you will get there because I'm here for you always. And it's just the tools and the whole program and all of it, the coaching. Of course you will live in food freedom and body love. Of course you're going to have fear, but then through the other side of fear is freedom. And fear and faith are both invisible. They both take energy to be in. So why not choose faith every time? And I want you to also allow yourself, when your brain goes to anxiety, what if, like future tripping, allow yourself to be in the what if in a positive way. What if I can live in food freedom? What if I can listen to my body and eat without restriction? What if I can love my body? Like, allow yourself to create the possibility that you can, because you absolutely can. And trust me when I say, if I can do it, you can too. And I know that's like easy for me to say because I've quote done it and here I am. But you don't know, you might know because we're all very, very similar in what we struggle with. Back in the day, I mean, you know my story. I've been through multiple different eating disorders. I was so petrified of weight gain. I would rather have died than literally gain weight. And I'm so free now. I never in a million years thought this would be possible for me. Even when I was ready to get help, even after the panic attack where I was like, I have no idea who I am. And I just know I can't carry on like this. I had no idea. I didn't have any hope that I'd be living in food freedom and body love. I just knew that I needed to do something different, else I just wanted to die. So I know you can do it. I mean, think of my clients. I mean, you know, and obviously this is a podcast, so everyone's going to be listening, but Ninka, I'm speaking to you because it's your question. You know Julia and Carla, my previous clients who are in the group as well. And I want to read a few short abbreviations of some testimonials that I've had that are all on my website. I mean, I've got so many. I'm so grateful. Just to give you the proof and the evidence, and to the wonderful listeners as well listening, it's possible for you too. I'm just going to read, I think there's 4 of them that I'd picked out. And each lady has overcome a different eating disorder. So some are anorexia, some are binge eating, some are bulimia. This one's from Kiri Jade, and she says, when I came to Victoria, I was in a world of pain. This evil eating disorder saw me restricting and binging my way through 31 years of my life. 31 years. I now live in complete food freedom. I eat what I want and when I want. The truth is, I barely think about food until I want to eat. I've gained so much from the work I've done with Victoria that it's hard to convey in words. And Carla says, I have lived with anorexia for almost my entire life, 25 years, up until 5 months ago. This is when she wrote this. My life was hell. Victoria was my light in the dark. From the first moment until today, she has been the main piece in my puzzle, day and night. After undergoing various psychological treatments, Victoria was the only one who made me feel seen and understood. She believed in me long before I believed in myself. My words are not enough to thank her for getting me out of the hellhole and bringing me back to life. And Julia says, I've gone from barely existing, hating myself and my life so much that I wanted to and had put together a plan to end it. Living in anorexia from childhood and all my adult life, believing I had no worth and was quite simply not enough, not good enough. 2, now knowing that I'm worthy and good enough, feeling safe to be seen, loving others and receiving love fully, waking up each morning excited for the day ahead. Victoria, this is how much you have quite literally changed my life. You are the most incredible person I have ever had the honor to know. And Tara, last one. Tara says, not going to lie, at first I really didn't think this was going to work for me, as I've battled with this diet binge cycle for as long as I can remember. I never felt as free as I do now towards food. I feel like I've been released from my food prison after a very long, painful sentence. So those incredible, only just a tiny handful of out of the hundreds, probably exaggerating, probably not hundreds, getting close to all those testimonials on my website. So of course it's possible to you, Ninka, and everybody else listening. It is possible, okay? Okay, so I have a few more questions, and I'm not 100% sure if she wants me to say her name, so I'm going to say her Instagram name from Ambleside. And they didn't come through very good because it was on a story and then it didn't fit in your question. So I've kind of made up my assumption from what you've said. I know it's all going to be aligned and perfect as it should be. So Ambleside said, recovery, help, strong, not skinny, and your experience. So my experience, I've shared quite a lot, and I'm actually going to link to this episode. Part 1, my story, yo-yo dieting and anorexia. Part 2, my story of an abusive relationship, binge eating, bulimia, and a fitness obsession. And also there's a link to all the podcasts I've been on. It's on my website. I'll link it below under the Me page. And if you scroll down like 3/4 down, you can see featured in, and you'll see I've been featured in the independent newspaper quite a few times. And if you just scroll across, you'll see, and it will link you to where you can listen and watch all the things that I've been interviewed on. So you can hear my story. If you're not bored of my story and my voice, like probably a million times over, you can listen and watch there. But I do want to speak to the strong, not skinny thing. So my question to you around this is, what do you value more? Do you value strong or do you value skinny? And why? When you've answered those questions, I have another question, and that is, does this feel good to you? Does it feel good to value skinny, or does it feel good to value strong? Because your emotions, our emotions, are our Google Maps for life and guide us and give us information and feedback, because we're emotional beings, right? We run towards pleasure and away from pain, and most of that has everything to do, in fact, it has everything to do with feelings. But you can feel uncomfortable and difficult emotions. It's just an emotion. It will pass, right? So that's a short answer to the strong, not skinny thing that you asked. The second thing that you asked was, you just said compulsive lower level movement. Now, I love words, and I Googled the word compulsion. This is really helpful for my explanation. So I quote from Google: compulsions are repetitive behaviors or mental acts that a person feels driven to perform in response to an obsession. The behaviors typically prevent or reduce a person's distress related to an obsession temporarily, and then they are more likely to do the same in the future. So that's really key, right? So your brain is always watching you. So again, you are not your brain, you are your mind. When you tell yourself or do something consciously over and over again, your brain's like, oh, cool, I'm going to habitualize that and make it a habit. So she does it automatically. And so if you have a fear around weight gain, let's say, which is most of the ladies' fear that I work with, and that's a learned fear, an unconscious bias learned fear through the society we live in, your brain is watching you be afraid of weight gain. And so let's use purging as an example. You've eaten a lot of food, you've binged, whatever it may be, you've gone to purge, or not purging, because we're talking about compulsive movement. I apologize. Let's use compulsive movement as an example. So let's say eating in general is fearful for you because you're scared of weight gain and all that means in society. And so to make yourself feel better, to relieve anxiety around eating, you over-exercise, you move all the time, you're constantly burning calories in an attempt to compensate the food that you've eaten. So then this becomes a learned behavior because it reduces anxiety. It, quote, works temporarily in the moment to make you feel better about the food you've eaten. And then the brain is watching you. And so the more you do this, the brain's like, oh, she needs to do this all the time because she has this fear. And I mean, the brain doesn't think like this, but metaphorically it does. The brain's like, I must center the signals of thoughts and feelings to move a lot, especially when she's eating, to compensate, because that's what we need to do to survive. Your brain sees what you did yesterday as a positive because you're alive today. So it will repeat things, and especially if you've consciously repeated it over and over again. Does that all make sense? So it's just a learned behavior. So being aware of the ways you're using exercise and what was the phrase that you use? Compulsive lower level movement. Write a list of all the ways that you move, lower level movement compulsively. Write a list so you're aware of the things you actually do. And then this can include standing, by the way. And I'm actually standing as I record this. And the reason for this, I used to stand all the time. And that was actually a really sneaky eating disorder behavior that I hadn't even realized. So we can only change it with awareness. The reason I'm standing today is I've sat down all morning. In fact, it's 3:15 as I record this. And I like to take my time when I'm planning my episodes. So I've sat down all morning. And actually, I want to stand up because I'm stiff sitting down. So it's all about the reasons why. But write a list of your lower body, because I did lower body at the gym the other day, lower movement compulsive behaviors. Write a list so you're aware, and anything that you become aware of, add it to that list. And share this list with your family and with the people that are supporting you. Right? Because when you become aware, you can change things. And like I said, sometimes you might not be aware, but then because now you're wanting to get better, you're wanting to recover, you will be gifted the gift of awareness of like, oh my God, that's a compulsive movement that I'm doing. I need to write that on my list. And it's sharing it with other people, putting it on the kitchen door or whatever, and then not allowing yourself to fool yourself, because you know exactly what you're doing. For example, the shit that I used to do. Oh, I'll go to the shop for you, no worries. Oh, I'll get this thing for you from upstairs, don't worry. And I would hide it behind people pleasing and being nice, just so I could go up and down the stairs more, or walk to the shop, or bike to the shop. And I would disguise it, and I knew exactly what I was doing, but I was almost like justifying it to myself that I'm just being nice. But you know exactly what you're doing. So don't allow you to fool yourself, and don't allow yourself to fool other people. Another thing that is really helpful is when you feel that compulsive obsession to move and you're aware of it, distraction is key for now, right? So journaling, breath work, meditation, embracing the discomfort, like literally crying, screaming into a pillow. Remember, the worst thing that will ever happen to you is you'll feel a feeling, and that can be very challenging, but you're strong enough to feel that. So express that feeling in any way you need to. The panic, the overwhelm, the anxiety, it takes your body into fight, flight, or freeze response, which is a nervous system response, like an attack, a stress response. Bring yourself down into rest and digest by breath work, listening to calming music, listening to a meditation. Bring your body physically back down to safety, and then you'll easily be able to feel the feeling. I say easily, a hell of a lot easier than if you're in fight or flight, because actually your logical brain goes offline when you're in fight or flight, a trauma response. And it's not impossible, but it's very challenging to then not do the thing that your biology is driving you to do for your safety, and that would be to move, because the fear of weight gain is so strong. So bring yourself down. You always have that conscious choice. It's easier to choose that conscious choice when you've brought yourself back down from the stress response. If you can, and if you feel ready to, bring humor into the eating disorder voice. Like if the voice is like, you need to move now, you can be like, I need to move now, me, and like make it into like a really ridiculous voice. And if you can, just bring humor into listening to it. And then that, I've shared this with you before, and you can like separate yourself from that, because you are not your thoughts. You are not the eating disorder thoughts either. As much as you feel like you are, you absolutely are not. You were not born with an eating disorder. You are not it, okay? You're just experiencing it. Another thing that you can tell yourself is, this too shall pass, because it always does. And this is where you get to bring mind mastery into play. Because do you want your brain to rule you, or do you want to be the manager of your brain? You get to manage your thoughts. You get to manage what thoughts that you think. The reason I don't say control, because we actually can't control anything, really. We can control, I don't like the word control, manage is better. Like, say if you had a manager at work, they're not controlling you, but they're managing you, right? And so this is the same with your mind, with your brain more so. You get to be the manager of your brain. Do not let's use the employer boss analogy, the employer basically run the show and manipulate you and trick you into doing what the employer wants, aka your brain, when you get to be the manager of that. So I like to bring your values into play, because of course our behaviors are driven by our values. Sometimes someone will have, when they come to me, a value of discipline. We can change our values at any time, by the way, if we want to. Of course we can change them. Even if we don't have the values we want, we can absolutely change that by consciousness and support. But say if someone has a value of discipline, how can you then have that value in alignment with mental mastery, with discipline, meaning actually, I feel like I really need to move compulsively now, but I'm going to use my value of discipline and actually not do the thing and discipline myself to actually go and sit down. So you get to be the master over your mind, and more so it's the master over your brain, right? So always do the opposite of what the eating disorder is telling you to do. That is the quickest and simplest way to recover. Do the opposite of what the eating disorder voice is telling you to do. And I promise you, very, very quickly, and you've already noticed this without saying your name, like from the conversation we had last week, running into the fear and doing the opposite, it gets so easy, so quick. And so I also want you to ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? If you didn't do the compulsive movement, what's the worst that can happen? And then with the answer that you have been given from answering that question, ask yourself this next one, and then what would happen? And then with that answer, ask it again, and then what? And then what? Until you get to the absolute root of what the worst that could happen. And it's quite funny sometimes when you look at it. So, oh my God, let me see if I can do a real life example. It's so hot in here, it's not even funny. I'm like, my face is like shiny. Well, let's go back into the old version of me and ask myself, what was the worst that could happen if I didn't exercise or move, right? The worst that would, and again, this is me embodying my old past self. The worst that could happen is I wouldn't exercise and therefore I would gain fat. That's just probably not even true, but that's what my brain would have gone to. Okay, so, and then what would happen if I gained fat? Well, then I'd be really unattractive and horrible and ugly and a failure. Okay, let's say that that's true, because we're going to speak to the fear. And then what would happen if you saw yourself as ugly, fat, and a failure? And then no one would love me. Okay, so that was my root fear, like no one would love me. I'd be alone. I'd be unwanted. I'd be rejected. So then it goes, then you can link it in a humorous way. So not exercising means you're basically going to die alone. I mean, lol. I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, right? And then, of course, my work and most of my clients' work is to go to the root, like finding the root by asking those kind of questions and then healing that. Is that actually true that if I gained weight, I would be unattractive and unloved and rejected and I'd die alone? Feels true, but why is it actually not true? And you can start to, look at those type of coaching questions. Right, the next thing that you said was, and again, they've not come through properly because you wrote a lot in a story answer. And I've interpreted this as like a question and I want to speak to, is fitness a cover-up for an eating disorder? Well, I am very excited to speak about this because before I do, I am not saying, by the way, that every single person who is in the fitness world, who is shredded and lean and bodybuilding has an eating disorder. I am not saying that. I'm speaking from my experience as a professional and personally. So it's very common for someone to transition from an eating disorder into the fitness world because the fitness world normalizes the eating disorder behaviors even more so than society normalizes it, and that society normalizes it a lot. For example, tracking food, weighing yourself, measuring food, measuring yourself, having your attention fixated on appearance. It's accepted in the fitness industry as a positive thing. And when I say fitness industry, I'm more so speaking to the type of personal trainers or the type of groups that you get where they're tracking their nutrition, they're looking at body composition, not just fitness in general, because of course that's so broad, but I'm speaking to the specific question. I'm assuming, like, when people go into that rigid rules, but it's for fitness kind of attitude, right? It's another way for the eating disorder to hide and to justify its behaviors. Like, oh, well, I'm making sure I'm getting enough protein and I have this goal and I'm making sure I'm eating enough carbohydrates for this training schedule. It's just, again, the eating disorder has gone from one thing and it's just like gone to the other thing. It's not gone away. It's not healed. It's just changed. It's just manifesting differently, and it's hiding behind this. It's justifying itself, and it's being accepted and normalized, right? And so, of course, a fitness and a nutrition obsession is less harmful than a full-blown eating disorder like anorexia, but it's still extremely damaging, and it's very dangerous, because my experience with the fitness obsession honestly caused more mental distress than the anorexia ever did. I mean, in the anorexia, I was pretty much living in denial most of the time, to be honest. But honest to God, for me, the fitness industry that I was in, or I created for myself in the environment, whatever it was, there's no blame here. It wasn't just about eating as little as possible like I did when I was in the anorexia. Oh no, the fitness world that I was in, it was all about eating the right macros. So the percentage or the grams of protein, fats, and carbs. It was eating enough protein and having like a hissy fit if I didn't get enough protein in. Oh my God, I'm going to lose muscle overnight because I've not ate enough protein. It's eating clean foods. It's having cheat meals. It's having carbs at a certain time of the day to support your training. It's not just thinness in the fitness world that I was in. It's definitely not just thinness. It's leanness. It's body composition. It's shape. It's muscle definition. It's a quad sweep here. It's a shoulder thing there. It's a glute definition here. It's skin texture. It's skin color. It's the volume of water in your fucking body. It's carb backloading to make sure your muscles are filled out and so they aren't flat when you have a photo shoot. Seriously, it was so bad. I became so obsessed. Oh, and so in order to kind of speak to is fitness is the world of fitness a cover up for an eating disorder, only you, and I'm speaking obviously generically to anyone who this resonates with, knows the answer to that. Are you hiding your eating disorder behind fitness? If tracking your macros and calories and whatever was all of a sudden taken away from you, would you freak out? If you couldn't exercise for one reason or another, or you couldn't train, how would that make you feel? Right? And honestly, I'm always honest with you, and that's just one of the things that I get a lot of feedback with, that I'm so raw and honest. It was coming up to 6 weeks ago now, I tore my calf ligament doing kickboxing, doing my training, and it hurt, obviously, and I cried a lot, but it wasn't the pain so much that I was crying about. It was the tears of not being able to then exercise, because I had my wedding like 2 weeks after so 4 weeks ago. Oh my God, that's gone so quick. Almost 4 weeks ago, I had my wedding. And of course, I wanted to walk down the frigging aisle, not be like wheelchaired in or having to be carried down the aisle. So there was that aspect to it as well. But it was another layer of healing that needed to happen that I had no frigging clue I needed to heal. So I tore my calf muscle, my ligament. It meant I couldn't even walk for days. And then I was like, wow, why am I having such a strong emotional response to this? And I was like, oh my God, there is still like a little bit of like old eating disorder anxiety coming up because I couldn't move. And movement is a big part of my life. And I love to move, not consciously from an eating disorder behavior aspect, because I genuinely love to feel strong and all the endorphins you get and all of that. But what I've learned from me injuring myself, and I'm so grateful it happened now, is I was training like 5 to 6 days a week, only once a day, not all high intensity, but I was still training quite a lot because I loved it and it felt really good in my body. Clearly, my body wasn't recovered enough because of the said injury. Everything happens for a reason. And you always learn a positive aspect from a situation if you are willing to always be the student. That life is the teacher, experiences are the teacher. And what I've learned is actually, I mean, I don't like to bring age into it because you're only as old as you feel, or aging is like a mindset, but I'm 36 and my physical body isn't as it used to be when I was in my 20s. And that's probably limiting bullshit belief, but this has served me now because I still can't be jumping and running yet. In a week's time, I can start to do things again slowly. But I now only train 3 times a week. So I've gone from like 5 to 6 days to 3 days a week and just resting loads more. So I'm so grateful that happened because I was able to bring up all that emotion and that response of like, it wasn't panic, it was just a lot of sadness that was coming up. And I was like, this is a lot. Like, what is underneath this? And there was an eating disorder remnants of like, but that means you can't move. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, well, you love to move. And I'm like, yeah, but that's a bullshit covering up what's really going on for you, Victoria. And underneath it all was like, you're in this food freedom now. You eat what you want when you want, and you feel so free, and you move quite a lot because it feels good to you. What if you don't move as much because you can't, because you're injured, and you still eat the same? Then that means you're going to have to get used to a bigger body again and go through all the rigmarole of body acceptance in a bigger body. And I was like, wow, that is so interesting. And I was so grateful that I discovered that. And lo and behold, I haven't, not that it even matters, but I'm at my set point. And because I listened to my body, I was naturally less hungry anyway, because I wasn't moving as much. And I'm just oh shit, whoops, nearly like knocked off a crystal that was hanging up next to me, sorry about that. And I'm just in my natural flow and balance, but I'm able to just fully let go of that little sneaky thing that was there that I didn't know was there. So I wanted to share that with you because hopefully it will help you, and it's quite a long explanation, but that's a tangible example of things hiding that you don't know were there. So going back to the question, like, or the anorexia, the eating disorder hiding behind fitness, only you know if it is or not. If they were taking away from you the tracking, the exercise, what would happen? Would you be okay? Would you be a bit annoyed because you love the fitness? Or, I mean, even tracking, like, why are you even tracking in the first place? If you listen to your body knows how much protein you need. Naturally, you'll start to crave it. So just surrender to what your body needs. So yes, so many people hide an eating disorder, consciously or unconsciously, behind the fitness industry. Okay, and the last thing, let me just have another sip of water, is, I can never say this word. Let me give it a go. It's called loss of period in Victoria language, but it's called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Yes, nailed it. That one, loss of period. This happens in an eating disorder, not for everybody. And I want to make this really clear. This doesn't happen to everybody. And it does not mean that these people are not underweight or not healthy. Hold on. It doesn't mean that they are healthy. But if you have lost your period due to the restriction, I actually had someone last year message me, it was a mum messaging me, her daughter had been diagnosed with binge-eating disorder. And she messaged me saying, my daughter's lost her period, yet she's, quote, overweight. Could this be linked to binge eating disorder? And I was like, absolutely, because she's going to be in so much stress and anxiety around the food because everyone's saying it's wrong, and your body will not have a period if it does not feel safe to do so. So going back to like eating disorder in terms of having actually lost your period. It can be anorexia, it can be binge eating, it can be bulimia, it can be anything. It doesn't matter because it's not primarily based on body weight. It's just based on whether your body thinks it's safe to have a period. Because if you think of why you even have a period in the first place, it's so you can release eggs for ovulation to actually have a baby and create life. Now, again, not Carla, one of my previous clients who you would have seen on podcasts and things, she never lost her period through all the anorexia, in severe restriction and anorexia. That does not mean she wasn't restricting a lot. She definitely was. It just meant her genetics, her body decided for some reason or another to use the energy that she did have into reproduction, and she's had children. So obviously in this world, her children were supposed to have been born because of the bigger story and the bigger mission and life goals that these children will have and how they will change the world. Who knows? But it does not mean you're not, quote, sick enough. That's what I wanted to say, really. So going back to those that have lost their period in an eating disorder, your body will bring your period back when it feels safe to have one, or to continue, having your ovulation every month, and it will start to balance out. When your period does come back, because it will, when your body's repaired enough and used energy as a backlog and had to repair all the things that were going on underneath the surface from all the restriction, when your body's like, okay, there's enough food coming in, we've repaired some of the major internal repairs that need to be repaired, there's still food coming in, now we can consider having her reproduce, because that's just what we do as humans. It's biological. It's just what we're here for, to reproduce and create life. Although I don't want to have children, so it's always still a choice. But of course, I ovulate and have a period and all of that. I've had one client recently recover from anorexia, and her periods just started to come back. And it is a little bit all over the place for the first couple of months. And now it's starting to regulate itself again. So it will come back, I promise you. Just keep eating, keep listening to your coach, which is me, and I've got you. It'll be absolutely fine. You need to be weight restored. I mean, it's not really a number. It's as an idea, if depending on how old you are, obviously I'm speaking very generically now, the weight that you were before you ever had an eating disorder, depending on what age you were, is the weight that you should be aiming for. And I don't encourage anyone with an eating disorder to see or know their weight, but if they're with a clinician or a professional monitoring that, they need to be at least at the weight there was before they even had an eating disorder. So that's kind of the weight restoration process. But it costs a lot of energy for your body to have a period and for everything that goes on inside of ourselves, and we have no idea. So your body's not going to use that energy if it's not even got enough energy to even survive hardly and function, let alone have a period. So it will come back. You can't ruin your body, I promise you. Just trust, surrender, keep trusting me, keep eating, and it absolutely will come back. Okay, so they are all my questions answered. I love you all so much. If you have any questions, please let me know. As you can tell, I love to answer questions. And is there any updates I have for you? I don't think so. My retreat is now full in September, my first ever retreat, and I will be doing more. So if you do want to be on a retreat with me, then just let me know and I'll put you on my interest list. Oh, I'm so excited about it. Please rate and review the podcast. Send me a screenshot when you've done that, and I'll put you into the prize draw to win the Body Love Bites, which is my paid online program. You get that for free if you win. As always, you can work with me through group coaching, and you can sign up for as little as $200 a month for lifetime access. And one-to-one coaching is a higher ticket investment. And I said I have 3 spaces left for one-to-one clients. So get in touch. If you have any questions at all, thank you so much for being here, for listening, for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Mwah, much love.